Hi, this is my pitch deck for my project Sweetie. Sweetie is about a teen's life that unravels when she accidentally awakens a dormant zombie-like virus, leading to a sugar-craving transformation into a ghoul and testing her relationship with those close to her. The film follows a young woman through an already turbulent time in her life, as she's beginning to grow more independent. The virus initially gives Anastasius the boost she needs to leave her comfort zone and become more outgoing. This does not last forever. From a sheltered hippie teen to something more monstrous that even she doesn't recognize, the film follows her transformation into a full-fledged ghoul as her relationship with her father she used to be close with and her relationship with her newly formed friend/lover is tested. Sweetie will be a 6-episode limited series with 40 minutes of watch time for every episode. The black comedy tone and stylistic dialogue were taken from Fleabag and Jennifer's Body. The fourth wall-breaking monologues were inspired by Fleabag and Possession. The look and characters were heavily inspired by a mix of Possession and Jennifer's Body. The main character of Sweetie is Anastasius Downs. She is a sheltered 17-year-old girl who begins to be reserved and also a pushover. Her parents are hippie freaks who forbid her from eating unnatural sugar, staying out past 9 p.m., or watching anything R-rated. She spends her time taking care of her mini plants and reading romance novels she hides under her mattress. Her personality begins to shift with the virus. At first, she's more outgoing, but that quickly fades to something more sinister. She begins to experience euphoria after eating candy, which fades into feelings of emptiness and extreme hunger for candy. She begins to become more reserved again by going out past 9 p.m. to roam. Her plants begin dying, and her once close relationship to her father becomes more distant and strained. She begins skipping family movie nights and dinner as normal food begins to repulse her. John is Anastasius' well-meaning 43-year-old father. His dream job is to go on a hiking trip after he read Into the Wild, now his favorite book. He believes what he's doing is protecting his daughter. To him, his coddling is just nurture. He fumbles around his words and feelings often, but loves his daughter and tries to show that in ways that make sense to him. Chrissy Anderson is the recent friend of Anastasius, or Annie as Chrissy calls her. She's 18 and a grade above Anastasius. She rolls her joints with rose petals and knows half the school. She's never had a problem getting someone to like her, and sometimes that gets her in trouble with people, but she doesn't really care. She and Annie have biology together and didn't talk until Annie forged a sick note for them and skipped class together. I wanted the theme to link to the idea of the monstrous feminine. Although women have often been used as a sign for the abject in horror, their role in the film is often passive and a plot device. A zombie is not usually viewed as a passive monster, so very few films have been centered on the female zombies or man-eaters. The zombification of Anastasius as a metaphor for mental illness and uncertainty has often been used in older and newer horror films. She begins to change physically, manifesting the mental torment she is going through. In Sweetie, this struggle represents the awkward years of teenhood growing into young adulthood. The issues that can arise in such a shaky and uncertain time can feel very alienating from yourself and others. I also incorporated themes of the monstrous feminine, teenhood, and sexual awakening. The pilot of Sweetie, called Fresh, will be the lightest episode featuring the least aspects of gore and the most comedic stylized writing. It will feature delicate and warmer-toned imagery and mise-en-scène. The first episode ends right after Anastasius' first sugar rush and begins to have the darker aspects of the show. Episode 4, Advanced Decay, will be the turning part of the show. One of the most impactful scenes in the series takes place in the abandoned pool Anastasius and Chrissy snuck into. Anastasius realizes she needs help and asks Chrissy to talk. The audience can see the negative impact that the virus has on her, but Chrissy seems to not notice as she begins talking over Anastasius about a situationship of hers called Steve. Chrissy happens to bring a bag of candy with her that she opens and doesn't offer Anastasius. Anastasius begins to salivate and focus on the bag of gummy worms, tuning out Chrissy's talking. Eventually, the tension builds until Anastasius finally snaps and yanks the bag out of Christy's hand, yelling at her, lashing out as she quickly begins to devour the bag in front of her. Scared and a little disgusted, Christy leaves Anastasius alone to eat even bits of plastic. The interaction sends Anastasius on a spiral for a few episodes. The last episode of the show is called Rebirth and features the darkest aspects of the show. During the first part of the episode, Anastasius has a tearful interaction with her father. However, the show takes a lighter turn as she learns her mother passed down the virus to her, and that, with help, it's possible to overcome the virus. The visuals are not as bright as the first episode, but you can see the shift to warmer lighting and calmer editing, as well as a return to the stylistic comedic dialogue. Like the progression of Anastasia's zombification, each episode gets a little darker. In the beginning, the episodes have a more lighthearted tone and look, and in the end, the camera lingers uncomfortably on flesh and rot. The once almost consistent inner dialogue is almost non-existent, and the character of Anastasia feels jilted, so the pacing will take that effect. The visual style of the series would emulate the progression of Anastasia's transformation, the 5 stages of rot: fresh, bloat, active decay, advanced decay, and dry remains, each getting more uneasy and decaying. Substituting blood for Twizzlers and red velvet makes the violent aspects of the show more sudden. The juxtaposition of the dainty cakes and sweets with the zombie virus will hopefully unnerve the audience. The handheld neon lighting filled disorienting shots will visualize the grittiness of the show. Shooting the entire thing on film will give it a gritty, vintage feel. The mise-en-scène and the outfits of the characters would emulate the 90s style. I've been interested in the horror genre for a long time. I like to use horror tools to illustrate more effective aspects of myself I have trouble understanding or expressing. The idea that monsters are just human anxieties made real was something I wanted to tie to my own experiences. Stylistically, I like exploring times in recent American history where a lot of change took place culturally, like the 90s and 70s, and how horror those reflected the fears of their time. The COVID-19 virus and the zombification process of Anastasia share a lot in similarities. Both COVID and the zombification process isolate people, come on unexpectedly, and take on a form of some disease. The mental impacts and alienation felt in COVID will be present in the series, as well as some events and feelings were inspired by my time in the COVID-19 pandemic. The target audience for Sweetie would be 16 to 26-year-olds, preferably those who are or have been through something that they could potentially equate to the zombification process. I suspect a show like this would have a predominantly woman/queer audience. Sweetie would fall under the horror black comedy genre. It would also have aspects of the body horror genre and teenhood coming of age. Sweetie will deal with drug use, sex, and difficult themes. There will be 1 or 2 graphic moments in an episode. Gratuitous violence and boobs will be included in Sweetie. There will also be uncomfortable shots and movements, such as scenes where Anastasius is eating cake, and it's made gross by like close-up sounds and extreme close-ups on gnashing teeth and skin tearing. Thanks for listening to my pitch deck for Sweetie.